G'day, Bomber fans. Well, the 2024 trade period was a boring one for the boys, but there's been lots of movement in the AFLW and some drama attached as well. We love drama, so get the popcorn out. There's going to be a lot going on to talk about today. Not all of it good. In fact, the Bombers may have gotten a little bit shafted. We're going to talk about that a bit later. We're going to go through every deal, give the girls a grade, and then discuss some draft prospects for the national draft coming up. So let's get into it, going deal by deal. All right, so our first deal of the trade period was a bit of a no-brainer. Nothing really to write home about, but we went out and secured some key positional depth and, more importantly, some backup in the ruck by bringing in GWS fringe member Courtney Murphy. She's only played the one AFLW game in her short career, but there is some promise with her and her athletic ability. She's a 24-year-old, 181cm forward that can pinch hit in the ruck. She's a little bit smaller, but very athletic, having played college basketball in America before a switch to footy. We needed some depth because obviously Steph Wales has that ACL injury and Too Good was in and out of the side as well, so Murphy can act as that fringe member to give us some support if needed, because we really didn't have that in 2024. So this is a good trade considering we only really gave up pick 65, a pick we probably wouldn't have even really used, to be honest, now that we've gotten more capital in. So good move for Essendon to start, needed depth. Next up, and this one's a little bit of a sad one because I really liked the way she was developing, but Ash Van Loon has been traded to the Sydney Swans. It was a 4-way deal, but I'm only going to show our part of the trade because that's all that really matters on this channel. So we gave away Van Loon and pick 47 in return, moving up the order to pick 35. I'm personally not a huge fan of this trade. I really liked the way Van Loon went about it, a tough and reliable young defender with plenty of room to grow, and in return we move up the order 12 places. I'm not too keen on that if it's midway through the second round. If we'd moved up into the top 30 or 20, I would have been okay with this, but I don't really think we got much out of this deal. We got a first team player, we lose a first team player and get a mid-second round pick while losing one in the third round. I get the vision. She wanted a trade. We needed to get something out of it. I'm going to talk about what happened when a trade fell through later in the video because it wasn't good. But yeah, it's always sad to see an inaugural Bomber leave the club. She was drafted late in 2022 and she played a really handy 26 games for the club. I'm going to miss her down back. I really liked her, but hopefully we can manage to get something out of the pick in the 30s. Keep in mind, we did take Van Loon with pick 73 when we drafted her. So if you think about it, it's a profit, but it doesn't really feel that way to me. All right, our biggest trade was left for last because young speedy forward Clarke actually left the club. She requested a trade to St Kilda, and on the last day she got there. We parted ways with our prize draftee from 2022. We took Clarke with pick 4 in that draft, and although she hasn't really hit her heights as that top 5 pick, she was still a really promising and big part of our future, so we had to get something good back in return, and we ended up getting pick 8, giving the Bombers 2 first-round selections for the draft. But yeah, again, you never like to see players like this go. She was a lot of fun and a bit of a fan favourite. Not always the cleanest and most impactful player, but really exciting with her pace and goal sense. Pick 8 is probably overs, to be honest, but based, I guess, I'm not hating on this deal because based on output it is overs, but I would have rather have kept Clarke than net that pick. I still think Clarke is going to be a really good player. She's still so young too. So much left to grow. So yeah, Clarke ends up at St Kilda. We get a really good pick in return. It sucks to see a good player go, but at least we get something in return, unlike this next departure, which is just annoying to say the least. Okay, so this one technically hasn't even happened yet, and it's not a part of the trade period, but we do have to talk about it because it is big news. So Paige Scott, they requested a trade to Richmond. It looked like there was going to be a swap of sorts with Scott going there and Essendon picking up Richmond forward Amelia Yassir. That trade didn't get done. Yassir signed a new deal with Richmond. She stayed there for 1 year. We thought young Scott would sign a 1-year extension with us, as what usually happens when a trade falls through. But out of nowhere, they've actually nominated for the draft. Bridges must have been burned. Scott must not have wanted to return back to the hangar because they have chosen to nominate for the draft where Richmond can select them with probably pick 29 instead of going back home to security with Essendon. And now that means we lose a promising young player and get nothing in return. And now to say that is unfair is putting it lightly. I'm not sure if the club was blindsided by this decision or not. You would think a trade would have been agreed upon even if we got little back in return, but you would think it would have been agreed upon if we knew that Scott was intending to, I guess, leave no matter what. The way it plays out, it seems like we thought Scott would sign back on if the trade fell through, which obviously didn't happen because there was talk of a straight swap for Yassir and Scott. That was on the cards at one stage, and there was talk of a 4-way deal as well. In the end, we didn't get back what we wanted at all. We probably thought Scott would stay at least the year if the trade fell through, and they've come out and left the club to go to Richmond in the draft instead. I mean, without fully knowing the details, this doesn't sit too well with me. Either way, both from the club and Scott, it seems like we just really didn't understand the situation properly. We lose Scott for absolutely nothing. And for Scott as well, I never like a player leaving a club that gave them a chance. There might be more to it, but leaving a Victorian club to go to another Victorian club and giving the club nothing in return, I mean, you better hope that they had hated life at Essendon or something, because if not, this just doesn't feel like a move that I can get behind. I'm a man of morals. I would hope that at the very least, Scott made their intentions clear to leave. If that is the case, sure, I put the blame on the club. Should have done better to get the deal done. But if not, and Scott had simply just blindsided the club with this decision to leave after the trade fell through, I'm really not a fan. All we can really do is speculate. We can't be sure as to what happened, but either way, it just doesn't sit well with me. Losing Clarke for pick 8, at least we get something back, but losing a 20-year-old young, exciting forward who's been in our first team, getting nothing for it just doesn't really feel like the way the trade period should play out, especially now because it sends a message to other clubs not to take them in the draft. Why would you want to? It's just a cheap pickup for Richmond and a big loss for us. Okay, so here is what we got and gave away this period summarised. So we've boosted our draft hand. Pick 8 is great. It gives us 2 big selections early. Pick 35 is an upgrade too, so we've got a strong draft hand, a really strong draft hand, and I'm going to talk about that soon because this is a very good draft, but it doesn't really feel worth it to me. We finished in the 8, we played finals, we're looking to improve as a team and win more games in 2025, but we've lost 3 first-team players, all young too, by the way, so this isn't out with the old and in with the new. We've lost 3 players under 21, all in our first team. Sure, we get pick 8 and 35, we have a good draft hand, but it doesn't feel worth it considering we lost Clarke, Scott, and Van Loon, and pick 47. Overall, looking at the ins and outs, we just didn't do enough to improve our team in the short term. In fact, we've gotten backwards, we've gotten worse. I don't think we're at the stage to be hitting the draft either. We have young talent already, or at least we had young talent. We had plenty to work with for the future. If anything, we needed experience and ready-made talent to push us forward in 2025, but we've now gone backwards and, I guess, decreased the value of our current side. It is now about the future again with a strong draft hand. So I'm going to give our trade period a D, I reckon. I know it was forced upon us with trade requests, but still, not to maximise the situation. We could have got Yassir in, we could have gotten better picks in. In the end, I think this is a poor trade period, but at least we have the draft to look forward to. Alright, so the draft, here are our picks. We have 8, 11, 29, 35, 83, and some later ones which probably might not be used. To be fair to the club, which I criticised a lot before, this draft does promise to be the deepest and best to date, and that is going to happen. More and more girls are feeling confident enough to play footy, which is awesome. They're trying to make a career out of it because there's more money than there was in the sport 5 or 10 years ago. So drafts are getting more worth it to be involved in as clubs, and we have some talent to pick up. Pick 8 and 11 are great to have. We'll likely target a midfielder with one pick, Sierra Greaves, Sarah Howley, Lou Painter, or Georgia McKee. And with the others picks, we can go tall. Poppy Schultz, Charlotte Riggs, and Emma McDonald are some good options. And the great thing is, drafts, as I said, are getting deeper in this comp. So picks 29 and 35 could well turn out to be really handy pickup players as well. So yes, the trade period wasn't ideal, but we're likely going to get some good young talent in the draft at least. It just means we might be behind where we were in 2024, unfortunately. But that is that. Quick AFL trade wrap up. Cheers for watching. I will probably do a review of the draft if this video does okay. But while that is going on, there will be lots to talk about with the men as well. Plenty going on there as always. Cheers for sticking around. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.